All right, hello. This is a recording I'm making for myself and for just to put on YouTube about a scripture verse that I found in the Quran and and some claims that I've read others make um, regarding the Quran or regarding the Hebrew Bible, and it's coming from um, both some scholars from the Muslim community, and I don't know. I don't really know who's making these claims, but they're mainly coming from online boards like people who are calling themselves experts in the Quran, but maybe they're not experts in the Bible or Hebrew Bible or Hebrew. Anyway, it doesn't matter because here's what the Quran itself says. It says here, and as you can see, uh, they follow. This is the Arabic version, and the left side is the English version. So we will go with the English version. They follow the messenger, the illiterate prophet, who is Muhammad. They will find his description and command written in their possessions in the Torah and the Gospel. He commends them to monotheism and obedience, and all that is known to be good, and forbids them from polytheism and disobedience, and all that is known to be evil. Quran 7, 157. So we see here that both the Quran and Muslims themselves, not just the Quran, but here in the Quran and Muslims themselves say that the Hebrew Bible talks about or prophesy about Muhammad. Um, right here, it mentions the Torah, right, which is the Hebrew Bible. So, where in the Hebrew Bible or Torah does it mention Muhammad? Now, when I say Torah, what am I referring to? Well, Torah could refers to in English it means law or the five books of Moses. However, Torah, based on the context, can also mean Hebrew Bible. We can use that interchangeably, just to make it short, so we won't have to say out loud Torah, prophetical books, and writings. It's just too much. Today, some people just say Tanakh, but it's just easy to say Torah to refer to everything, the Hebrew Bible. Okay, that's that's easier. Sorry, I'm hiccuping. So the Quran and Muslims both claim that the Hebrew Bible talks about Muhammad. Now, I'm not looking. I don't care in this video about um, the New Testament or the Gospels. This has no concern with me. I'm only focusing on the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. I'm not focusing on any other what you call it topic like science or anything. Just this claim here where they say that Muhammad is in the Hebrew Bible. It's talked about, prophesied about in the Hebrew Bible. And some sources they point to in the Hebrew Bible are Isaiah chapter 11, 4, 21, 13 through 17. Now, in this first video, I won't address Isaiah, nor will I address the second book that they use, Deuteronomy. But I will, in this video, I'll try to make it short and concise, focus on Habakkuk and the chapter and verse that's pointed to is chapter 3, verse 3. But in this video, we will read the whole, well, not the whole chapter, but a greater context of the chapter to get a better understanding of it. So we can understand what this smaller verse is talking about within the wider verse of chapter 3, verses 1 through 16. not yeah. So we have a bigger bird's eye view. So that's the book. So yeah, we will discuss the book of Habakkuk, and I will try to make it short as possible. Okay, so this is the claim. We want to find out where in the Hebrew Bible does it mention Muhammad. Okay, and we're gonna go to what Muslims have pointed to, um, and what the Quran claims. I also have to point out that okay, if what they claim is about Habakkuk is true, then it's true. If not, then it's false. And if it's false, it's a lie, right? Well, not necessarily that, but it's just false. Well, how will I approach the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, right? Well, I'm viewing it mainly as a literary work, as a cultural anthology. That's how I'm viewing this book. I'm going into this. So I'm reading it as a literary work, just like you would read Harry Potter or Aesop's Fables or Shakespeare. And however, with when it comes to the Hebrew Bible or the Torah, I'm taking into account the its cultural anthology, and I'm taking into account its ancient Near East context and its background. It's very important. And I also want to tell you the sources I'm using. Some of the sources I'm using is, of course, the general knowledge I've uh, gained from youth. um, the Book of Isaiah, the Book of Habakkuk, the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Hebrew Bible itself, and a lecturer from Yale University, open Yale courses. There's a lecture you can go there. It talks about the same book, and some of my ideas or prompts are coming from there. Um, Now the Torah, right, or the Hebrew Bible was of course written in Hebrew, right? That's what it looks like, Hebrew Bible. Um, and because it's written in Hebrew, we have to use the Hebrew Bible, and we're going to use since not all of us are experts in Hebrew, and because this is an English based video, I'm going to use translations from Hebrew speaking experts and Hebrew speaking rabbis. Not of course there's like Christians, there's other people here, but I'm eliminating Christians and just focusing on Jewish speakers, people who actually can speak the language of Hebrew, and their translations of the Hebrew Bible. So one translation is the of Hebrew is Robert Alter. He translated Hebrew Bible into English with commentary, and also there's another one called the Complete Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, um, with Rashi's commentary. That's also a translation into Hebrew from Hebrew speaking experts. So again, I want to again we're looking at ancient Israelites in the book of and the book of Habakkuk and the book of Isaiah to see if Muhammad is in there. But we're going to first look at a bird's eye view of of these claims here. We're going to look at the bird's eye view of the book of Habakkuk instead of uh, directly going to the verse. Because if he goes to the verse, we don't know the ancient Near East context or its background or its cultural anthology, then we're going to get it all wrong, right? We'll just make assumptions, and we don't want to make assumptions about the text. We want to know what is the text, what is the Hebrew Bible, where is it coming from, who's speaking, why they're speaking, and what context are they speaking. So let's take a bird's eye view first before we delve into the text. So um, here I created this here. I hope you can see it clearly. But we want to know who, first of all, who are the ancient Israelites? And the time period I'm going to mainly focus on is uh, is this time period here in this video. This time period. It's going to be right around here in the beginning, right? That's what I'm going to focus on. Let me fill this shape. This time period from after 900 BCE, right? Just right after that, this area right here. Okay, just That's what I'm going to focus on in the beginning, and then later on in the video, when we get to Habakkuk, we're going to skip to uh, this area here in the second century BC. Well, I also want to mention that during this time, yeah, during this time, around um, this time, the ancient Israelites, this time here, when we have this group called the ancient Israelites, uh, uh, before around 1000 BC, there was a king called David. And then about 100 years or so later, about 100 years or so later, about 922 BCE, the kingdom of David, of the ancient Israelites, were divided into North Kingdom and South Kingdoms. We see here. So by 922 BC, at that time, ancient Israelites became divided into two kingdoms for any reason, various reasons. It could be tax reasons, just whatever conflict they had. It doesn't matter at this video at this time. I'm not focusing on it. But they were divided into two kingdoms, and they were called the Northern Kingdom of Israel here, Northern Kingdom of Israel, and the Southern Kingdom of Israel. And sometimes the Southern Kingdom of Israel is called Judah. So we need to keep that in mind. So sometimes it's called the Kingdom of Judah. So whenever we hear the word uh, Judah in the Bible, or Kingdom of Judah in the Hebrew Bible, we think of the southern kingdom of Israel. And this is what it looks like on the map. And at that time, you have here in the south in this yellow circle the kingdom of Judah. This is the southern kingdom of Judah, or the southern kingdom of Israel. And there's Jerusalem right here within the southern kingdom of Judah. Keep that in mind. Jerusalem is within Judah. Jerusalem is within the southern kingdom of Judah. Okay. And in the northern kingdom of Judah, you have Samaria, right? The kingdom of Israel. Sorry. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. It's not called the northern kingdom of Judah. It's just called the northern kingdom of Israel. Okay. So the northern kingdom of Israel, you have Samaria. That's their main capital. But in the southern kingdom of Israel, you have the kingdom of Judah, which is where you have Jerusalem. Okay. So they were split into two different kingdoms. And also keep in mind too, uh, besides the kingdoms of Israel, you had another kingdom called the Assyrian Empire, right? The Assyrian Empire was a huge growing threat at that time. In fact, this was called the around yeah, it's the Assyrian, basically the Assyrian Empire. Uh, and also you have the Neo-Assyrian Empire that evolved 100 years later. But around this time it's the Assyrian Empire, okay? And the Assyrian Empire, basically, I had my, oh, yeah, basically look like this stuff here. This is the Assyrian Empire right here. All right, started off right here. This circle, this red circle, right? That's how it started out. It's somewhere here. So that was uh, um, uh, very one of the strongest military powers in the world. Okay, so keep that in mind. So we have um, the Assyrian Empire, the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Israel, and the southern kingdom of Israel is called Judah. Great, and they're divided. Assyria, the Assyrian Empire wants to conquer everybody and swallow them up. And yeah, another thing to keep in mind, I forgot to mention, is that whenever whenever an empire conquers another people, um, what happens is that those people just disappear. They're like genocide, and they just are conquered. They become slaves or just conquered, and they lose their whole religion, identity, and they become assimilated into the conqueror's empire. That's just what happens in those days. That's the way it was. So again, Um, I'm going to focus on this around this time in the beginning, like I'm doing right now. I want to review. Uh, at this time, 922 BC, the ancient Israelites divided into two kingdoms: Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom of Israel. And the Southern Kingdom was called is called Judah, or Southern Kingdom of Israel. The North Kingdom is called Northern Kingdom of Israel. Right? Good. That's the key here. Um, Another thing to keep in mind is that um, in the the more ancient Eastern cultures around Israel, recorded by countries and cultures in the neighboring Israel countries and kingdoms and such, um, uh, they they had their own texts and sources and history as well, right? And it goes back to even like 10,000 BCE, way before the ancient Israelites started. In fact, what we find is that the ancient Israelites evolved from these neighboring countries that later on became the ancient Israelites. Uh, One of the things that we know about the kingdom of Israel's here, the ancient kingdom of Israel, is that they had these people called prophets, right? You probably heard of Abraham. Here's the Arabic name: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael. Here's the Arabic name for Ishmael. Noah. Everyone, I think a lot of people in both Western and uh, around the world heard about Noah and Noah's Ark. Well, a lot of the stories um, well, before I mention that, I'm going to say this. When it comes to the kingdom of Israel, right, and their prophets, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael, and Noah, all these prophets here, and all of ancient Israel, all of these people, they were polytheistic, right? They worshiped many gods, and they had a pantheon of gods, including Yahweh or Jehovah, or Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter, right? Look at this. Look at this clearly. This is a pantheon of gods they had, right? In the past, they worshiped many gods, all of them, from Noah to Jacob, all of them. That was their worldview at the time, you know. Uh, um, Here. That was their worldview, and we identified, with archaeological evidence, we identified that the northern kingdom of Israel mainly worshipped this god here called El and Asherah here, right? Asherah, and the southern kingdom of Israel, or kingdom of Judah, worshipped mainly Yahweh. And a lot of the books, like the book of Isaiah, was written regarding, this Yahweh God here, and Habakkuk, you know. So different people, different books, different times, and of course, it's not exclusively Asherah and El weren't exclusively only in the kingdom of Israel. Some people moved and traveled and migrated, and so you had the practice also here, the practice of El worship and Asherah worship and Yahweh worship, all mixed all in here. But the southern kingdom dominated with Yahweh worship, and the northern kingdom dominated with other gods worship. But yeah, they definitely worship many, 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 different gods. And but these were the main ones here. These were the main ones, and this is what they look like. Okay, that's what they generally looked like. Here's another view of them. You have El on the left, and Asherah, the mother goddess. Asherah was the consort of El, and you can see a picture of her. It's from the 13th BCE. So this one depicts the mother goddess, or Asherah, one of the goddesses of the ancient Israelites, nursing twins. These two things are twins here. These little stuff here, right here. These are twins, and their names are Shahar and Shalem. Right. So 13th century, BCE. They're worshiping many, many gods, right? That's how it started. So all these, like I said, all these prophets, Noah, Ishmael, Jacob, worship many, many gods, right? And when they're talking and when they're writing or saying anything, they're talking in this context. They're not thinking of one God. They're talking to many of them in these contexts. And in the Hebrew language, well, it's hard to do it now because of the change modifications that came later with the Hebrew Bible. But when they were thinking in their head, they're thinking this. That's their worldview. Many gods. Okay, like I said, these were the main gods. El, the war god, we'll call him Yahweh, Jehovah or whatever. I mean, interchange between Yahweh and or calling it Jehovah, or I may even say YHWH. But you should know when I say YHWH, I mean Yahweh or Jehovah, all same thing. Or I might just call him the war god. Okay, but I mean, but you gotta make understand that I just mean one Yahweh, this guy here. So there was El, there was Yahweh, and there was Asherah. Okay, this is what they look like. This is this artifacts archaeological artifacts they have of them. So what does this mean? That means that when it comes to the Torah, Hebrew Bible, they are basically polytheistic. This is their worldview. When they're writing in a polytheistic world. There's no one God yet. um, Especially at that time. What time am I speaking of? This time here. There's no one God in their writings at all, uh, um, as it was developing. Um, okay, so like I was saying before, at that time, around 900, 700, we're moving down the timeline now. So now we're moving from the 900 BC to here. Okay, now we're here around 722 BC, yeah, the 700s BCE, right around there. So we're moving to this era right here, right? Okay, great. So at that time, around the 700s BCE, you have this Neo-Assyrian Empire, this red stuff here, right? These red people here, under a guy called Sennacherib. This was the strongest military power in the world. They ruled all over this land here, this area here, vastness of land. And they conquered many people. And when they conquered people, they swallowed them up. Those local people got genocide, and people who got left over after those battles assimilated into this Neo-Assyrian Empire, right? So, like I said, let me move this here. This little plot right here, this little thing right here, um, is actually Israel, right? The kingdom of Israel. I'll make it yellow, and I'll make it like that. This little area right here, yeah, right here is Israel. Okay, good. And that's what this is here. Yeah, this here. That's what that is. Okay, that's Israel. And remember, they have northern kingdom of Israel, southern kingdom of Israel. At this time, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Israel had a political conflict, right, or disagreement, and that led to the both sides what clashing and fighting, right? And what happened around 734 and 732 BCE, the Syria and the northern kingdom of Israel joined forces to go and fight the southern kingdom of Israel. Right? I'm not going to go into the details now. Maybe a second video I'll go more into details. But generally, King Ahaz of the southern kingdom of Israel, or Judah, right? He didn't want to. He wanted to fight. I mean, he wanted to be protected. I mean, he was worried, so he made an alliance with ta-da, the Assyrian Empire, right? Remember who's the Assyrian Empire? It's these guys right here, right? The Assyrian Empire are these guys right here, and I'll make it red. No, I'll make it red. I'll make it I don't know what color to make it. I'll make it orange. There we go. So this is the Assyrian Empire, right? This is the Assyrian Empire. So the southern kingdom of Judah or Israel, southern kingdom of Israel, made an alliance with the Assyrian Empire, and they agreed to be their vassal, right? Their vassal, or be under them, right? Be ruled by them. They just made that agreement, so they will be protected from the northern kingdom and Southern Kingdom fighting them, right? Now, so around 721, these Assyrians here came and invaded the northern part of the kingdom of Israel, and all of the northern kingdom of Israel were conquered. They all this all the you had 12 tribes of Israel, right? 10 tribes just were disappeared, right? They got genocide. They're gone. They're all dead, right? And those who got left over assimilated into the Assyrian Empire. They lost their culture. They lost their language. Everything's gone. Okay. Only the southern kingdom of Israel, or just Judah, survived because they have an agreement, right? And they were allowed to keep their culture, they were allowed to keep their religion and language and whatnot. Okay, as I'm being very general, but this the easiest way you can make this video short. Okay, so basically, what was this before? This blue stuff was the Assyrian kingdom. That's how it was before. This morphed into this, right? So by 700 BCE, this tiny, uh, you know, Neo-Assyrian Empire grew into morphed and turned into a Neo-Assyrian Empire and grew into huge, uh, strongest empire in the region right here and ruled over all of this. So this whole thing here, Northern Kingdom was goodbye, gone, no more, no more Northern Kingdom. Only the Southern Kingdom exists. Yeah, and right here. But what about their gods? What about the gods of Abraham, the gods of Isaac, the gods of Jacob, the gods of Ishmael, and the gods of Noah? What happened to them? Well, they were allowed to. The Southern Kingdom was allowed to keep their culture, you know, and some of the books that they grew over the centuries, right? So yeah, they like I said, they had many gods, and they were allowed to keep their culture. They were allowed to keep all these gods after this invasion right here in 721 BCE, right? Um, and around 640, I'm making it short, 640 to 609 BCE, around that time, 100 years later, uh, King Josiah started to make religious reforms for whatever reason. Maybe he felt that um, you know everything else failed. He probably was influenced by some groups, some Yahwehists, and what he did was remove the worship of gods other than Yahweh. Remember who Yahweh is? Remember who Yahweh is? So decided to um, this king decided to say, hey, we're only going to worship um, one God. He didn't outright ban them, but he just removed them from the official list of worship. So it worked out something like this. Okay, right. So these two, well, we're taking off the official roster. Uh, um, to for worship. right? He removed the worship of other gods except Yahweh, the war god. You can only, he's the official one. He's the best one. You want to worship. So right here, and slowly after he made this religious reform, um, you had a school of Isaiah. You have students of the prophet Isaiah. Already Isaiah probably was dead during this time, like right after this time. But he had a lot of students who continued to grow and develop the Isaiah thought, right? Before and after the Babylonian invasion. So the Assyria, after like almost 200 years, 700, 200 years, the Assyrian Empire was invaded by the Babylonian Empire, right? And um, I won't go into detail. Um, by that time, maybe before, a little bit after, or a little before, uh, you can see how Yahweh was only worshipped by 530 BCE, and you have books starting to reflect that. You know, and in fact, I have to I forgot to mention here you had two books. The first Isaiah was chapters 1 through 39. Generally, okay, there's some discrepancies, but generally it's chapters 1 through 39. Uh, the first Isaiah was written while Isaiah was alive, generally. And the second Isaiah was written by the school of Isaiah, or other people who collected Isaiah's thoughts or works and contributed to this his ideas and thought. That was chapters 40 to 66, and so it's a little bit different here, but and you're gonna have the Babylonian ideas here, mainly here, and chapters 40 to 66, and some mixtures here and there too, intertwining of thought. Um, so basically, by 530, they were worshiping the only the war god or Yahweh uh, by this time, and so they were in exile. They were slaves again here. Um, so like I said, the first one was here around this time, 722. The first invasion by the Neo-Assyrian kingdom, and then a second time right here, right here, right around here. This is the same place by the Babylonians, and right before uh, they were invaded, because of that king. Remember that king here, King Josiah started religious reforms. Right around that time, the 5 books of Moses started to become modified and redacted, right? Um, and then we have the final around this time the final version of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, right? And afterwards, a lot of things started to reflect a monotheistic view, even though they still had the idol, they still had the image of the thing they worship. You can see right here, um, they had the coin. So, like I said, prophets before were very polytheistic, and then polytheism morphed into monotheism around that time, where they're still worshiping an image, right? You can see in the 10th century here, this idol of the Yahweh. They had idols of it. And this is from the Hebrew University. This is from the uh, Biblical Archaeological Society Library. Images of Yahweh, images of their God. Even in the 4th century BCE, you have coinage of this God here that they worship. So by that time, the southern kingdom of Israel began to worship Yahweh only. So that's all this is very important to where I'm going now. And you can see all the books, a lot of the books of the prophets were written after that time, and some were written before that time, and some were even really written before that time. And pieces of the 5 books of Moses were even written way before that time when they were all polytheistic. And I want to mention again that even before these books were written, Noah himself, right? Noah, the prophet Noah, right? was from another culture. He's a borrowed entity. He's a borrowed legendary figure from from somewhere else, from other people, other groups, right? That existed around that time. So they borrowed people, they borrowed histories and sources and modified them and created them for their particular ethnic group. And that's how they came up with their psalms and books. They borrowed from other cultures and created their legendary figures and stories, right? Yeah, that's basically how everything evolved. So you have the book of Isaiah that was written during the first exile, and then you have Habakkuk here, Habakkuk, and other books, including the book of Daniel, an ancient comic book that was that was written during the second invasion after in the late exilic period, and they were conquered again and invaded again by the Babylon. So invaded once, became like slaves. Invaded twice again, became like slaves. So this is all interesting to where we're going now. Now that we know, remember I mentioned before how um, the cultural anthology is important, ancient Near Eastern context and background is important. How we are looking at it as a literary work and a cultural anthology. All that's important to where we're heading now to answering to understanding these claims written by or spoken by um, the Quran and Muslims that say the Hebrew Bible talks about or prophesies about Muhammad, right? So if it prophesies, so where we want to know where in the Hebrew Bible where it prophesies about Muhammad. Now where we're going is we're going to go to the book of Habakkuk, and we're going to look at that chapter that Muslims point to, and possibly the Quran that talks about Muhammad. What do they say? So here it is in Arabic, if you can read Arabic. But basically, it's coming from an article by a doctor. I can't pronounce his name, but he's a Muslim doctor. Here's his name here, right? Let's call him Dr. Al Najjar. Okay. Um, and he wrote an article. It's the Arabic name of the article. And an English name is called Preaching the Prophet Muhammad in the Bible. And he quotes from the book of Habakkuk. Okay. He quotes from it. And we will read the English translation of his words. And here it is. Here's what he said. In the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 3. So we're only looking at one verse, not the context. He's only looking at one verse. So in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 3, it is translated God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran Salah. Actually, the period should be here. And then he says, Habakkuk's prayer of his majesty covered the heavens, and the earth was filled with his praise, and it was shining like light. He had a ray from his hand, and there was a concealment of his power. And then Dr. Al Najjar goes on to say, if Mount Faran is the mountain of Makkah or Baka, then who among the prophets of Allah, other than our master Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, migrated from Mecca to near Tiama, which is north of Medina? Well, this question is easily solved if we just take the book of Habakkuk and let's let's not just look at a tiny verse, but let's read the whole. Let's read more verses. Let's read the context from 16 verses and let it speak for itself. And remember, when we're reading again, I want to emphasize how are we looking at this? We're looking at it as a literary work. We're looking at it as a cultural anthology. We don't care if it's right or wrong. We're looking at its ancient Near East context and background and culture anthology and as a literary work. So we want to know when we're looking at, if you open a letter, you want to see if it's addressed to you. Same thing with this. You want to know who is it from. Same thing with this. When we're opening a letter or looking at any work, we want to observe who, what, when, where, how, and why. Right? Like, who is it speaking of? Right? What is it talking about? When was it written? And we know when Habakkuk was written. Habakkuk was written in the late exilic period when they were invaded by the Babylonian Empire. And around this time, we understand around this time they were only worshiping one God at the time, um, and um, this God was called Yahweh, right? Mainly Yahweh, and also the idol worship of the Yahweh disappeared as well during this time. So the image was eliminated as well. Eventually, it was coins, but then they got eliminated eventually, right? Um, So let's read Habakkuk and let's take on what Dr. Al Najjar says, and let's just let it speak for itself. Asking and keeping this in mind, who is it for? What it's talking about. When was it written? We know where it's written. We know when it was written, right? How and why. So let's go and read it. I have two versions. I have the Arabic version on the right, and I have the English version on the left. So let's go. Let's begin. So I'll read it in English. In English. Here we go. I'll read it in English. Book of Habakkuk. This prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk, played on a musical instrument. So who? We know it's spoken by Habakkuk, right? And how did he do it? He played it. He was singing. He was jamming, man. He was singing a song. So when you sing a song, what do? You use express yourself in very poetical ways and very lyrical ways. It's like things like that. So it's not a this is not a theological treatise. This is not uh, a mathematical formula. This is a song. This is a poem, right? And you express yourselves in poetry in certain ways, in songs in certain ways that may reflect what you are thinking. And what would Habakkuk be thinking? You can tell me. They are invaded by the Babylons, right? They were invaded by the Babylons. They were conquered. How do you think they felt? And we know that usually invaded people or conquered people disappear, but these people were allowed to live. They were allowed to keep their culture still, right? But guess what? Their land is gone. They are in slaves. They can't even see their land, right? Sometimes they're exiled. They're gone, right? And they're invaded. They're an invaded people. These Jews. Jews began to formulate in the word began to come up by the 586 BCE, and the practice of Judaism didn't form until the second century BCE, by the way. So, yeah, they were invaded people and conquered people. They have nothing. So, how do you think he felt? Habakkuk. He was feeling terrible. Maybe he was even reflecting, maybe he was reading all these books that he's able to read and all these resources from his ancestors 1,000 years ago or even thousands of years ago and reflecting on them. So, he wrote a song. This prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk, played on the musical instrument. And here I'm going to call it, for simplicity purposes, I'm going to call it Yad Vavhe or YHWH Yahweh. Okay, I'll read it again. This prayer, you can read this here, or you can read the Arabic version, or you can read the English version. This prayer was sung by the prophet Habakkuk, played on a musical instrument. Yahweh, I have heard tale of your mighty deeds for Israel in the past. And O Yahweh, I stand in awe of you. Revive those deeds once again in these crisis years. In these very years, make them known. Though you are angry, may you remember to show mercy. So we know who is speaking. It's Habakkuk. How? Singing a song, right? Who is it addressed to? He's talking to Yahweh. He's talking to his God. It could be in visions, dream. He's reminiscing on what? Tales of the past. Tales he wasn't born yet. Tales about Moses. Tales about the Noah's Ark. Tales about all these adventures that he heard that his ancestors passed down to him. He's thinking about those times. He's thinking about Moses, the prophet Moses, all those prophets in the past. He's thinking, we right now we suck. We're like slaves. We're in exile. If God is so great, He can take us out of these things, right? He's remembering those things, those great deeds that God did in the past for Israel, right? And guess who is it for again? Israel, right? In the past. So we know it's about Yahweh and it's about the God of Israel, right? And Habakkuk is speaking. Okay, so he wants God to bring back those deeds, bring back those miraculous works, those actions again, once again, in these crisis years, in these very years, make them known again. Though you are angry, may you remember to show mercy. So he feels that God is angry with his people. That's why he's being punished. But he also feels that God hasn't abandoned them. He feels that God will still show them mercy, that they will get their land back one day. So here, next verse, he says, and look, notice it's the past tense. He's reflecting on the past, not a future day. And even if you use the future terminology here, it's like a reminiscence of the past as well. It's just like speaking in hope. But here it's blatant that this is talking about the past. So it's better, it's more understandable. So you won't get confused. I recall he continues to sing his song. I don't know how it sounded like, so sorry about that. And I'm not going to sing here. But he said, I recall God had left from Esau's timid deserts. The Holy One left from Prophet Ishmael's Mount Perak, coming once and forever. His majesty covered the skies and filled our land with praise. Now, what is this talking about? This is what Dr. Al-Najjar quoted, right? These little blog. But what is it talking about? It's actually talking about how God came offered a deal to or relation to Esau in the desert, and then a separate group of people. He went to the prophet Ishmael's people and offered a deal. But after offering them a deal, he left them. We don't know if they rejected the deal. Probably they rejected the deal. The story from other traditions that they rejected the deal, and God came over once and forever and offered his covenant, offered his Torah, his laws to the people of Israel in the past. That was part of his mighty deeds. For whom? Was it for Ishmael? Nope. Was it for Esau's people? Nope. It was for whom? Israel in the past. So God is leaving these two groups, right? For whatever reason, some deal he had with them. Maybe they rejected it, and he's coming once and forever to Israel, right? So for Israel, right? Remember the deeds for Israel in the past. For Israel, his majesty covered the skies and filled the land of Israel with praise. Remember, he's talking about the past, right? Right now, Israel is like the southern kingdom of Israel. They're like slaves. So he's reflecting on the past again, right? So for Israel, when they saw him, when they saw him coming once and forever for them in the past, his majesty covered the skies and filled the land of Israel with praise. And there was a I gotta and there was an aura in that day, like there was light, a ray of piercing flashes from his hands, where there hid his warrior strength. So this, in the poetic fashion, it's expressing Yahweh, the warrior God. His hidden strength wasn't for Ishmael. Maybe they reject him. Wasn't for Esau. They had a different purpose, right, in mind. But that warrior strength was revealed for Israel, the people of Israel. He came for them once and forever. He came for Israel once and forever, showing his, revealing his warrior strength. That he is for them, right? This war god. And it goes on. Before him, that war god, pestilence fled. And before him, and the flaming bush sparked out at his moving feet. It reminds you of the burning bush of Moses. He halted, he stopped, and the earth quaked in punishment. He merely glanced and caused the nations to scatter at the Tower of Babel. Those mountain of men were dispersed. Those aged old hills were flattened. He surpasses the ways of the world. In the midst of our rebellion, Jewish rebellion, in the midst of our rebellion, the armies of the Cush were seen rushing over. But in the end, in our repentance, even the nation of Midian trembled in terror. So what is this talking about? This is talking how, he's reflecting, he's reflecting on those books, all these books that he's read about his people from ancient time, almost 1,000 years ago or so. And he saw that, sometimes his people rebelled against God, right? And God teaches them a lesson, but gives them a spanking, gives them a beating by sending armies against them, right? Rushing over, right? That's what he's saying here. In the midst of our rebellion, the armies of the Cush came over, right? To fight them, right? But in the end, you know, a lot of times Israel repented, right? They turned around, they had a change of heart and came back to God, right? So in the end, in their repentance, even the nation of Midian trembled in terror. So when they repented, everyone was scared of them. God became their what? God became their warrior strength, their war god, right? He became their war god again and fought for them, helped them fight and defeat their enemies. Okay, let's go on forward and just explain that. So, verse 8: Were you enraged, O Yahweh, when the waters, with the waters, when you divided the Jordan River? Were you in wrath when you parted the Red Sea? You obviously know what this is talking about. This is talking about when Moses uh, parted the Red Sea and when they divided the Jordan River and it was diverted downstream, right? So I'll read it again. I'll keep going. Were you enraged, O Yahweh, when the waters, with the waters, when you divided the Jordan River? Were you in wrath when you parted the Red Sea? No, it was you driving your horse stallions and setting your chariots of victory. You pridefully brandish your weapon. He showed his weapon, his axe or weapon, right? Proudly. You brandished your weapon. You kept the words of the oaths you vowed once and forever. So he remembered the promise that he made for Israel, right? So their God remembered the oaths he made for Israel. You split the earth and brought forth streams. Mountains quake at your sight. The raging Jordan River got completely cut off and diverted downstream. Suddenly, the dried up river had a voice to cry out. The skies echoed in kind, meaning that the river was dried and they can walk on the river and they can basically speak and talk and worship and stuff and give God praise, while the river is dried up. So that's what this is talking about. In the skies echo and kind. This just means it was bright outside. It was sunny day. It wasn't raining. That's what it means. So suddenly the dried up ocean or river had a voice, had people there, right? And the skies echoed in kind. The sun and moon stood still as your arrows charged in for the kill of valor. Your spears gored through for the win in the heat of battle. So this is talking about the time when apparently the sun stood still and Israel was there to massacre all their enemies and commit genocide and kill the people. Yeah, that's what it's talking about, right? So he's talking about that time where those invading armies they killed, and all the armies that were in their land they destroyed, right? And this kiss continued. You tread on the land with fury. You thrashed the nations. You just destroyed the nations and drove them out of the land, right? The land of Israel. You came to rescue your people, Israel, to save your anointed ones, Israel. You ripped apart the roof of the villain's house. You left no stone unburned down to the foundation, once and forever. You cracked the enemy's skull with his own weapons, they who charged in haste, thinking that Israel were an easy prey, trying to devour us, the pauper, the poor man, in an ambush. You trampled upon the Assyrian army, right? Sennacherib's army, immense like the sands by the sea, heaping up large body counts as they fall. After praying my song, after praying my song, so yeah. So what this is, it tells us that all this is about Israel, right? Right. And look, even Habakkuk is reflecting on the fact that the Assyrian army was defeated. The Assyrian army here was also defeated by the Babylonian army invasion. So eventually, the Assyrian army, their leader was Sennacherib. They were destroyed utterly. That's why it mentions Sennacherib here. So these are the Assyrian armies. The Assyrian army uh, were immense. They were vast. There were so many, like the sands by the seaside. And however, they had a large body count. They were falling, right, and being conquered. So after the prophet Habakkuk stopped, and he said, after praying my song, I began to tremble inside. I felt my lips quiver and shake. I felt my bones shaking in distress. And then he said, I will wait the day when the calamity and destruction strikes the people who invaded us. So we can summarize Habakkuk. Habakkuk is a prophet. He's singing a song about the mighty deeds for Israel in the past. He stands in awe of Israel in the past. He wants the God of Israel to bring back those days, to get the people of Israel out of this crisis, out of this slavery, right? He wants God to remember his vow and covenant and oath that he promised them, right? And then he talks about the oath. He talks about those deeds all throughout here. All this whole chapter, verse 3 on here, is about those deeds in the past. This has nothing to do with the prophet Muhammad. This has nothing to do with the future Muhammad at all. This is all about deeds, reflecting on the deeds of the past that Yahweh, the God of Israel, has done. Nothing to do with Prophet Muhammad at all. Nothing at all. So, Mr. Dr. Al Najjar, it can clearly be seen that the book of Habakkuk has nothing to do with the Prophet Muhammad. Instead, right? Instead, what am I doing? Instead, it is about a conquered people like slaves in exile, reflecting on the past when they believed that God raised up the kingdom of Israel, their own people, to into power in the land of Canaan or land of Palestine or land of Israel, whatever you call it, right? Therefore, the claim, remember that claim? The claim by Muslims, remember that? The claim there? Muslims claim that Muhammad is in the Bible. Quran claims that Muhammad is prophesied or spoke about in the Bible. The claim that by the Quran itself and by Muslims that the Hebrew Bible discusses Muhammad as a future hope or a future servant or a future prophet. In this case, in the book of Habakkuk, Habakkuk is false. We can make that a big red false. And that's a big red flag coming from them. I'm going to end the video here because I'm not going to talk about Isaiah. Maybe I'll make a part two for that later on. But this is bogus here. This is totally bogus. This is a for now strike one, right? We can make a strike in this whole entire thing here and say that this is false claim uh, that the Hebrew Bible talks about Muhammad, right? This is false, right? When it comes to Habakkuk, so you know what? I'm going to strike out this. This is false because um, we haven't dealt with Isaiah, we haven't dealt with Deuteronomy, and I'm not going to deal with them in this video. I just want to show you that the claim is false. And if I make other videos going into these things, we're going to see if this name if it still holds up. But for now, uh, this is false. Yeah. So end the video here. Um, See you later. Bye bye.